You got some problems that you wanna solve? Then let's chat. That job getting on your nerves? Then let's chat. Girl, you know I can relate, so let's chat. Cause I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom.
It's your girl Cece. I'm your hostess with the mostest.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
Hey everybody, I am here with another episode of The Bottom Line Is. On this week's episode, I kind of want to talk a little bit about resume tips. I feel like right now, so many people are, wanting to do more in their career and aspire to be better and, need some help with the tools that it takes to get to that great job that they want. Okay, so some people, they have never even created a resume before, while others, they just use the Indeed resume. And the Indeed resume is basically when you set up an account on Indeed. You put in, just some pertinent details far as your work history, and it creates a resume for you. It's just text print, nothing fancy about it, but you do have the option to upload your own resume. I'm not sure if a lot of people know that. Then you can allow your resume to be searchable. Indeed is obviously one of the top ways that employers are finding talent, and the top ways that employees are also finding talent. But I kind of just wanted to drill in some expectations from an HR professional of what we look for when we are looking for a resume that can in turn help you in creating that great resume. So from an HR perspective, when I am looking at a resume, I'm going through looking at a job requisition and looking at those individuals that apply. I literally only take less than 5 minutes to review a person's resume. And that's because I'm familiar with the job. I know what the job entails, the details of that job and the requirements. And I'm looking to see if I see anything remotely close to that on a person's resume. Remember, your resume is really your foot in the door, your first impression that the employer is making about you. So if you don't have a great resume that is tailored to the job that you're applying for, then these recruiters, unfortunately, are just going to bypass it, unfortunately, and you're never really going to get the chance to showcase your talent. So that's first and foremost. So make sure that you, study the job description that you're applying for. A lot of us, when we create one resume, we're like, that is the one all be all, but you really need to tailor. You're not saying you have to create a whole brand new one, but you really need to tailor some of those specific things on your resume to the job that you're applying for. Back when I used to work at one of my old jobs, we used to teach people about word clouds, where you would basically take the job description and put it inside of a word cloud, and it would pop out with those words that are that have a little bit of behind it, so to speak. And then you would compare that into a word cloud of your resume to just kind of see if there are some similarities, and that would help with the applicant tracking system from behind the scenes, the algorithms and things of that nature, to kind of see if your resume would even come up when it's being searched. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. So those particular buzzwords, okay, when it comes down to your resume. But let's kind of get into it and break it down. So the first thing on your resume is you want to put your name, okay? After your name, and it's your professional name, okay? And then it's not necessary to put your home address, okay, at this point in time. Again, we don't want to give people anything that they can try to discriminate against you on, excuse me. And so you just basically need the city, the state, and or zip, completely of your preference, right? Because nowadays, we get a lot of people as HR professionals that say that they want to resign or leave because the job is too far. But it's like, didn't you know that when you applied and you came here and you worked for this amount of time, but now it's a problem? Again, just speaking from the HR perspective, okay? Everybody else might have their own rationale, but I'm just like, why? So you want to put that down. And of course, a good number to reach you on, okay? Now, I've had people where they forget to take the numbers down off of their resume. And what happens is when we go to call that person, the phone is disconnected. So make sure you keep your contact information up to date. And then, of course, your email. Now, I have seen some type of email, none that I can recall right now to give you an example, but talking about sexy such and such at gmail.com is not going to cut it, okay? Because people are going to judge you. I'm just going to keep it real with you. People are going to judge you, okay? So you really want to make sure that you are using a professional email address. Most people will use like their first last name or last name first name, or for me, I'm an HR, so I may use hrsierra@gmail.com. Please note that that is a fictitious email, but just something to that effect that, is professional, okay? Not an attribute, okay? We're not young anymore where our emails were, attributes of our personality or what we're doing and things like that. So, you have to give off that professional aura, if you want to receive it back, because you get what you put in, okay? So making sure you're doing that and checking your emails all the time. And then it's also a good idea, depending on the industry that you're in, to put your LinkedIn handle on there. And so when you put your LinkedIn handle, note that you can edit that handle. So for instance, you can do linkedin.com/your name, because it defaults to a whole bunch of letters and numbers. So you want to make it short and concise. So I usually use my LinkedIn panhandle with my name on the end. So that way I'm easy, it's easy to be searched. And just note that too, if you have a LinkedIn profile, it can be searched up in Google as well. Okay. So that's for your top. And then you want to make sure that you have clear, defined sections underneath it there. And usually we tend to start off with a summary. Okay. And that summary, we have long histories of work experience. Obviously, I really don't care too much about a person's experience beyond 10 to 15 years, because my thing is time, technology, and all those type of things have changed. So it's great that you did something in the 90s. That's great. But all it's going to do is really elongate your resume, because nobody is looking, or I don't want to say they don't care, but it's just not important as it is to the things that you've done in the last 10 or so years, because we want to make sure that you're up to date with all of the different technologies and information within the field. And that's usually a question that you get on an interview is, how do you keep up to date with the technologies, your industry? So if your resume is not really reflecting that, then is your answer really going to reflect that? I'm just saying, something to think about. Okay. So a summary basically is just a few lines, a few sentences to just summarize what the person is looking at. Okay. For me, HR professional with 15 plus years of experience excelling in the following industries. And then I'll usually say master's degree. So I'll highlight my highest level of degree, and, just any great accomplishments that I've had in my industry. I'll try to highlight it there. Again, doesn't need to be a whole book. Again, as far as just a paragraph, 3 to 4 lines. Okay. And about anywhere from 3 to 5 sentences. Okay. Depending on what you put in there, but it's a summary of your work history that is pertinent to the job that you're applying for. Now, keep in mind, I keep saying the job that you're applying for. Okay. It's okay to switch industries, but that is where you're going to highlight those, what we call transferable skills. And so those are skills that you may not be spot on to a particular industry that you're going on, but they're in the same ballpark. Okay. So for me, if I worked retail, but I want to switch careers and be on the phones in the call center, and maybe it involves some selling or some sort. So that transferable skills would be customer service, working with others, working in tough environment, being able to think quick on my feet, be able to handle situations last minute, being able to upsell. So those are the things that I would highlight under my retail job, for instance, if I was trying to change industries. Okay. That's what we call transferable skills. So under your summary, then the next thing that you're going to put is your work history. So some people will call that section just experience. Okay. And so that's where you're going to basically put your jobs in chronological order. Okay. Now you can do this 2 different ways. So one is basically putting your jobs in chronological order, starting with the name of the company, or you can start it off with the position that you held. Okay. And then you're going to put the dates there. Now, another way to do this is basically you can break your resume. We call it a chrono-functional resume in comparison to the chronological one I was just talking about, where you would basically highlight, let's say, 3 type of attributes, for instance, of your resume. So for me, I think when I did that, it was human resources was the top, because that was my main. And then I think I did administration. I can't remember the other one right now, but you get the idea, just kind of breaking it down. And then I would basically combine under each one of those categories on a chrono-functional resume, all of the different highlights of what I've done underneath of that. So for HR, I would say, supervise a certain amount of employees, handled employee relations issues, dealt with benefits questions, things of that nature. Okay. But most people are more familiar with the chronological. But I always suggest the chrono-functional if you're somewhat of a job hopper, meaning you've worked at a job a year or less. People look at that. They look at those dates. Okay. And those dates you still highlight at the end of a chrono-functional resume. They're just not right there at the top for somebody to kind of lay their eyes on. Because for me as HR professional, I go look at the dates first, and then I start looking at the job titles, and then I look at what bullets are go underneath there. So what bullets do you put under your job title in the company? Basically, you put, again, things that are pertinent to the job that you're applying for. We do several different things on a day-to-day basis while we're at work. So you want to only highlight, and I try not to do more than 6 bullets. Even if I'm doing a chrono-functional, I may extend it to maybe 6 to 8 bullets, but I try to keep it around the 6 bullet mark, okay? And you're going to highlight the top things that you do in your field. So again, and making sure that, that you are also quantifying where you can in those points. So earlier I mentioned one of my bullet points is supervise top employees ranging from the following positions. So that's one bullet. I would, as an HR professional, I deal with employee relations, benefits, recruiting. So I would basically say for the recruiting bullet point, post requisitions, source and review resumes, conduct interviews, partner with the hiring manager, as well as onboarding. So that all would be in one bullet, okay? That process. Employee relations, work with employees in regards to situations, work with and partner with the management team in regards to situations and mitigating risk and coming up with a plan on how to action those items. That's another bullet. So hopefully you kind of get the idea. If your job, let's say customer service, where you have a quota that you have to reach, then maybe you would talk to X amount of callers per day, did X amount in sales on a monthly basis on average, talk about my time to fill a position is, was always 2 weeks or less to fulfill a position. So things like that. You want to make sure that you quantify that on your resume. So once you either do a chronological, and I do suggest have a chronological as well as a chrono-functional, especially if you're working with temp agencies, they tend to shy away from the chrono-functional. They're trying to make it, easy for their clients to kind of go through. So they'll usually ask you for a chronological resume. So once you have your job experience, underneath your job experience, you are going to highlight any education that you have. Okay. And so I also remember I said I highlighted my highest degree in my summary, but then you're also going to break it down under that education section. So that would be the name of the school that you attended, as well as what degree you were reached. So I really don't find it valuable to put a high school diploma on there. Again, my personal opinion, and it can depend on the job that you're doing, but typically there's usually a question on the application that says, do you have a high school diploma / GED? So it's really not needed. We're looking at, what education have you received after you graduated or received your GED? So graduated from high school or received your GED. And then if you have any special type of certifications, then you would put that there as well. If you're, involved in any type of organizations that are relevant, word again, relevant to the job that you're applying for, then you can go ahead and add that to either your summary or put that under education as well. Okay. And then you'll end the resume with references upon request. One of the things I want to go back to the 6 bullets too, it's very important to make sure that you start those bullets with action verbs. Most of the time, people will do responsible for, and then the next bullet, responsible for. Okay, that gets tiring seeing that. And of course you were responsible for it. That was your job. Right? We know that, right? So, led a team, managed, cooperated, oversaw, all of those type of action verbs is what you want to start each one of those phrases or bullet points with. Okay. So doing some of those things and making sure, again, sometimes you might have to tweak and move certain things up and around will definitely help you be successful. I wanted to also give a tip in regards to like job hoppers. If I've been at a job for 6 months or less, I generally, and this is just my little secret tip that I'm sharing with you all, I generally don't put that on my resume unless it is, again, very relevant to the job. And the reason why I don't put that on there is because, again, I don't want to come off as a job hopper. Yes, will that look like a gap on my resume? Yes. And if they ask about it, I'm not going to volunteer that information. But if they ask about it, then I would say basically, I took a temp assignment and, while I was trying to find an opportunity that I felt was right for me. That's how you answer that question. If there's a huge gap, like a lot of people had a lot of gaps during COVID, or we have a lot of single parents, that usually will stop a career sometimes to raise their children. I had some personal affairs that I needed to take care of, but now I am all ready to take on this opportunity and work with you to make your company better. There you go. It's all those different type of things. It's a lot of wordplay, on that, because, and sometimes when you do have those large gaps, again, they ask you the question, well, how do you stay current? And you let them know, like, hey, for me, because I'm in HR, I follow SHRM, which is the Society for HR Professionals. So I say I'm a part of the SHRM group. I get all of their emails about things that are changing within the industry. I go to their conferences. I try to network just to keep my my brain sharp as it relates to what's going on. There you go. So just keeping those type of things, in mind as you are, doing that resume. Again, that resume is your way into the door. Okay. And then once you are in the door, then it becomes interview time, whether it's a phone screen, which it typically is, just to kind of make sure that your initial goals align with the parameters set by the hiring manager for that particular position. And so that's when it comes to selling yourself from a in person, so to speak. Right now you're letting your resume, the words do the speaking for you. But then once you get to that portion, then you'll be able to start selling yourself and be able to get your point across through execution of your words. So if you want any more, resume tips or have any questions and things like that, I know this isn't a topic you think that you would see on the podcast, but it's really true. And again, remember, my podcast is about trying to make people better and to better yourselves. And what way to do that than to have a great job that you enjoy and the culture is great and all these different things. So if you ever have any questions about resume, interviewing, what questions I should ask on an interview, things like that, go ahead and feel free to leave a comment below. I do also have an HR consulting business too, where we focus in on recruiting. That's called Rose HR. So just in case, I know I talked about that when I first started the podcast, but make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully this helped you out, or maybe you can help out a friend. Feel free to share it with them. We do this for everybody, and that's just what the bottom line is.